Hi everyone, welcome back to Ways of the World, a brief global history with sources. We're going to continue our study of global processes, technology, economy, and society with the world economy, the acceleration of entanglement. All right, so let's start with the globalization of industrialization, development in the global south. So economic globalization began in the global south with the spread of industrialization. There's a central priority for government legitimacy. Economic development is an uphill battle when the population had low literacy, low managerial experience, weak private economy, and little industrial infrastructure. It was difficult when the economy was already dominated by the West and rival superpowers. There are variable outcomes. East Asian countries produced for export had the strongest economic growth. Africa, the Arab world, and some of Asia have had little economic growth and declining living standards since the 1960s. And variables also include geography, natural resources, colonial experiences, cultural, political stability, and social equality, economic policy, population growth, and involvement in the world economy. All right, reglobalization, deepening economic connections. So World War I and the Great Depression played havoc on the globalized world. Post-World War II, there's a renewal of earlier trends. The Bretton Woods system was established. It's the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund in order to prevent economic contraction and nationalist excesses. The capitalist countries viewed the world as a single market by the 1970s, and this is a neoliberalism. They reduced tariffs, developed free capital movement, developed mobile workforces, private enterprise, tax and spending cuts, and they curtailed government involvement in the economy. Now, goods and capital circulated rapidly, and that increased global trade and employment. And financial and commercial economic involvement developed internationally. Cheap labor, tax breaks, looser environmental regulations was a big part in the developing countries. Foreign currencies were bought and sold quickly, and transnational corporations also developed. All right, containerized shipping. So the growth of global trade has been facilitated by containerized shipping, a highly mechanized process of moving goods that requires far fewer workers and has substantially reduced transportation costs. This photograph illustrates that process as it occurred in the Chinese port of Qingdao in mid-2017. So what are the social and economic effects of the type of trade pictured in this image? The type of trade depicted here is highly mechanized and global. Socially, it means the goods being traded will be the ones that came from a different part of the world and will lead to some sort of homogenization of culture. Economically, it lowers the cost of the goods for the consumer, but also means fewer people will work at the port to be able to purchase those goods. All right, growth, instability, and inequality. So huge, rapid creation of wealth came with economic globalization, and that had a huge impact. People began to live longer, people were more literate, the infant mortality rate is reduced, and poverty is reduced as well. There's a periodic crises that have shaped world history. 2008, for example, the U.S. housing market, quote-unquote, bubble collapse foreclosed millions of homes. It increased unemployment and tightened credit, as well as reduced consumer spending. And the global economic inequality has been persistent, even growing, perhaps, between and within countries and regions. All right, pushback, resistance to economic globalization. Our differences between the rich global north and developing global south have come to forefront of world affairs. There's contention over world trade rules, foreign aid terms, representation in international economic organizations, indebtedness, and environmental and labor standards. In the 1990s, international coalition from the rich and poor countries thought corporate globalization favored rich countries and corporations and hurt the poor. So at a 1999 meeting of the World Trade Organization, the WTO, thousands protested, and that led to a World Social Forum. In 1994, peasant protests against Mexico joining NAFTA was also a big part of those protests. All All right, and our last image here, anti-globalization protest. This is a demonstrator in Sao Paulo, Brazil in 2013. It took part of a worldwide protest against the biotech giant Monsanto. And they hold a sign that reads, quote, "A better world according to Monsanto is a world with more cancer," end quote. So how are the criticisms of globalization similar to the criticisms of the Industrial Revolution? Well, there are some criticisms that overlap both globalization and the Industrial Revolution. For example, the lowering of labor standards, fostering ecological degradation, and increasing economic inequality. And that concludes our study of the world economy, the acceleration of entanglement. I will see you guys for producing and consuming.